everyone, welcome back to my channel. I've gotten a lot of requests to do some tutorials, so I thought I'd start on one that was requested by Jenny Alphabetico, and she asked if I could show how to remove some of the sleeve ease in Simplicity 1544. I just want to preface this by saying, I am by no means a sewing expert. I've only been sewing for a little over 2 years, so whatever I'm showing you is not the be-all end-all way to do it, but it's just the way that I do it, and hopefully it can be helpful to you. One of the reasons that I think that when I got back into sewing that I really enjoyed it this time around is that there is so much information available on the internet. I love researching what other people have done with patterns. There's so many tutorials available. If you want to try something new and different, by all means, get online, Google it, and find what it is that you want to do. So I'm going to show two methods on how to remove some of that excess ease in this sleeve pattern. The first is just like a quick and dirty one you can do if you're already part of the way through and you just want to get it fixed. It's not very glamorous, but it works. I mean, I have done it on 2 of Tony's shirts and he wears them all the time. It doesn't bother him at all. And then the second method is actually involving redrafting the pattern. So let's get started. So this first method is one that I have used. I did it the first time I made this shirt. And it just involves taking this seam in just a little bit and then curving it back out to meet the arm side. So you don't really change this arm side at all. It's all done in the length of the sleeve. For this particular shirt pattern, you attach the sleeve when the shirt is still flat, and then you fold it together. You fold it along the shoulder line and the sleeve, and you do this all in one seam. So I've just done a fake shirt right here so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So say you've gotten to this point. Notice there's no cuffs on the sleeve yet. This is very important. You get it to this point, you try it on, and you're like, oh my God, this is way too big. The easiest way to remove some of that ease is just to make a seam in. So now, say I've decided that I want to remove 2 inches off of the ease of this shirt. So I'm going to mark a line 2 inches in. And I might go maybe 4 inches from the end. So I'm just going to stitch a line along that 2-inch mark. And then I'm very carefully going to just fan that out till you get to the armpit. So you're going to stitch along this line that I've sewn here, and then you just want to trim your seam allowances. And that's really the easiest way to remove some of the ease. Like I said, you're not messing with this arm side at all. It just stays the same, and you've just sort of tightened in all along the length of the sleeve. So this is great to do if you've gotten this shirt partially sewn and you just don't want to take it all apart and redo it. It's a good quick fix, and like I said, I've used it twice. I've used it on this shirt and another one, and Tony doesn't mind. It gets the job done. Now moving on to the more complicated redrafting of the sleeve. For the second method of taking the ease in on the arm, you're going to need a couple of utensils. First, I would use tracing paper. I never want to make any changes to my actual tissue paper, because if I make the changes and I don't like them, I might not have this to go back to. So I always keep the original intact. For tracing paper, many people use Swedish tracing paper. It's very durable. You can sew on it, you can see through it. It has a kind of nice drape, so you might be able to tissue fit with it. I love Swedish tracing paper, but I can't afford it, so we don't use it very often. I use medical paper. I bought this off of Amazon. I got about 12 rolls of these, and each roll comes with about 200 yards, which means I'm never going to run out. It's very similar to the tissue that pattern makers use. It's see-through, very thin, easy to use. The only thing I would say is a downside of using medical paper is it's not very wide. Sometimes I have to tape two pieces together to get an entire pattern piece marked off. Other things you're going to need. You're going to need a tape measure, and you're going to want to know the bicep circumference. That's going to be the circumference from your armpit all the way around. And last but not least, probably one of the most important things you're going to need is a French curve ruler. If you don't have one of these in your sewing arsenal, stop what you're doing right now and go get one. I use this all the time. It has a hip curve on it, it has armhole curves, neck hole curves. It's everything you're ever going to need when drafting a pattern. So I've already traced off the patterns. The ones you're going to want to use for redrafting the sleeve, you're going to want to use piece 11, and that is the cuff. Piece 1, that is the front of the shirt. Piece 4, which is the back of the shirt. And then, of course, piece 9, which is the sleeve. So all I've done at this point is trace along the pattern. Next, I measured Tony's bicep. So Tony's bicep is 13 inches. Here's where you need to decide how much ease you want. If you want a fitted style shirt, you're going to want to use the bicep measurement plus maybe 1 inch. If you're going to go for a more relaxed fit, I would say the bicep measurement plus 3 inches. So since this is going to be a relaxed shirt, I'm going to add 3 inches to that bicep measurement. And that gives me to about 16 inches. You also want to add in your seam allowance. This is a standard pattern, so it has a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you have 5/8 on both sides. So if I add in 5/8, that gives me to 17¼ inches. That's going to be the distance that you want between this corner and this corner of the sleeve cap. Then I measure the actual distance on the pattern. So the actual distance is 21 inches. If I take 21 inches and subtract the 17¼ what I'm left with is 375. I want to divide that both ways, and I get roughly 1.9 inches. So I'll measure out 1.9 inches on this side. And same thing over here. Now, for the length of the sleeve, you also want to take out that 1.9 inches all along, or whatever it is, which is half of the difference. So I'm just going to mark a couple spots along the line. And actually, I'm doing this in pencil, and you should too, but right now I'm just going to switch to a Sharpie so you can see it better. Now that I've marked my 1.9 inches, let's draw my new sleeve line. You also want to make sure you transfer over any pattern markings, like notches. This pattern also has a really wide cuff, and so I wanted to actually take that same amount of measurement out on the cuff as well. So I'm not going to make any changes here. If you wanted to keep the cuff wide, you could either leave out these tucks, or you might even angle this out back to your original width. So So I would go from that 1.9 inches in up on the top, angled all the way back out to nothing on the bottom. That's only if you want to keep the cuff really wide. But since I think that it looks a little bit awkward, I'm going to keep the cuff narrower as well. The last thing we do on this is also altering the sleeve cap head. I want to still stick at that same height because that height works, and I just want to like narrow in the shoulder, but you want to make sure you have sort of that curve still happening. So that's all we need to do here. You'll see that the original sleeve was about like this. And we just narrowed it in just a little bit, and we're going to use this smaller section. So that's all you have to do for your sleeve. So I move on. This is the shirt front pattern piece. So what I'm going to do is take that same measurement, the half of the difference, the 1.9, and that's how much I'm going to bring this arm side up. So from the very end of the arm side, I mark in my 1.9 inches. Then you just use your same curved ruler, starting from your point that you've marked, and blend it back in to the original pattern. The rest of the pattern stays the same. So here was our old sleeve depth, and then this solid line is the new one. So that's for the shirt front. The shirt back, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to measure up my 1.9. It's going to be the new depth. And I'm going to connect that to 5/8 of an inch below the end of the pattern. And that's to allow for your seam allowance. Okay, and then we're back onto our original line. The rest of the pattern stays the same. So we've taken off 3.75 inches from the entire circumference of the sleeve. I don't want to take that much off of my cuff. I only want to take 2 inches off. So I just mark in 2 inches from my original cuff end. And that's going to be my new cuff. Also make sure you transfer any markings. So right now I have a button placement marking 1 inch in, so I'm just going to make another button placement marking 1 inch in from my new cuff. Having this cuff be 2 inches shorter means that my tucks aren't really going to be that big, and I'm okay with that. And that is how you change your pattern to reduce the sleeve width.